Good evening, and welcome to Connecting Communities, a show about extraordinary people doing extraordinary things in our communities. I'm Dr. Robert Sains, and it is with great pleasure that I take this opportunity to introduce this segment of Connecting Communities. Tonight, Connecting Communities features a special presentation, Love, Theater, and Healing, a WellArts Institute performance located in Portland, Oregon. WellArts Institute is a nonprofit agency whose mission is to explore, develop, and practice creativity as a means of wellness. They have partnered with many healthcare providers and social service agencies in Portland, including Oregon Health Sciences University, Dornbecker's Children's Hospital, the Veterans Administration Medical Center, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, and the Terwilliger Plaza Retirement Community, just to name a few. In a few minutes, the director of WellArts Institute, Kay Liljeholm, will discuss how these partnerships with WellArts work together to provide writing workshops for people from those communities. Katie is the consummate artistic professional. She is a teacher, a board member, director, and producer, as well as having been a stage manager for the Portland Actors Ensemble. Katie's professional background includes distinct accomplishments such as participation in the Profile Theater Project, 2 boards, and Broadway Rose Theater Company. Katie has also toured as a puppeteer for the nationally award-winning Tears of Joy Theater, which she directed and produced. Tonight, Katie brings with her to MetroEast Studios a small group of professional actors who will perform monologues written by several writers who have found healing and wellness through their writings. I introduce to you now Connecting Communities host and executive producer Renee Ducharme Brody and WellArts Institute's executive and artistic director Katie Liljeholm.
Hi everyone, thank you Dr. Sains for that introduction. Welcome to Love, Theater, and Healing, a WellArts performance by local professional actors. Let's meet Katie, who will share more about WellArts, the partner organizations, the Beautiful Minds, and Voices of the Elders programs. Good to see you again, Katie.
Good to see you, Renee. So, WellArts is a 13-year-old arts and medicine nonprofit, and arts and medicine is a field of professional arts in which artists work with people in healing contexts. And so that can be in local community centers, it can be in hospitals, it can be with different advocacy organizations. As Dr. Sains mentioned, WellArts has partnered with a number of organizations around Portland, and we do a different program for each. So, for instance, in our Voices of our Elders program, this is specifically a workshop for anybody over 60, and we started it in 2009 with a National Endowment for the Arts grant. And we started it because part of a healthy aging process is life review, that when you retire, you have 60 or 70 years of memories, and you haven't necessarily had a lot of time to process that, and so it all comes back to you. And narrative provides just this wonderful spine to sort of pick out which details were important and what the meaning of it all was. Our Beautiful Minds workshop is a program with the National Alliance on Mental Illness. A big barrier to finding help for people with mental illness is stigmatization. Mm-hmm. It's not an illness that we appreciate in our community. It's one that we look down on, that people who have it are wrong and bad. Mm-hmm. And so people don't come out as having it, and then they don't get treatment. So a lot of the stories that we talk about deal specifically with stigmatization. The monologue that we're about to see actually comes from our reunion writing workshop. So once a year, writers from all of our different workshops, so writers from our cancer workshops and our MS workshop and our veterans workshops, can come together, write again, keep it as part of their healing process, and still reach a community with their stories. And so that's what we're about to see.
And so you would also maybe say that they keep a journal.
Many of our writers do write outside the workshops. In our workshops, we do anything from drop-in classes that happen maybe twice every month to workshops that are maybe once a week for 8 weeks.
I see.
And so in the workshops, I or any of the other facilitators, we present a particular writing tool. So for instance, one session we might talk about characterization and what details the participant needs to give the audience in order for the audience to see a person come alive on stage that isn't actually there or maybe is no longer with us. And so we talk about what those tools are and how to do it, and then we write, and then we share the stories in the workshop. And then I collect the stories. I give people feedback on that, helping them to fine-tune their stories for an audience. And then we bring in the actors to audition. And so the actors audition reading the participants' stories. And then in the rehearsal process, the actors are working with the participants to kind of further hone the stories for performance. And then we do our performances. So all of the writing, in fact, for the performances happen in the workshops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is there a layer of emotionality that occurs during these workshops? Is it palatable?
Yeah, anytime you write stories, emotions are usually not terribly far behind. And I think one of the things that surprised me most when I started working for WellArts was just what people are walking around with, that I never considered myself to be a naive person, and I certainly read stories all the time and knew that those came from true experiences. But when I really started asking other people in my community about their stories, I was shocked about what came up, and I thought, well, this really needs to be shared. We should not be naive about each other's lives. We should be a part of each other's lives and understanding what it means to be a human being, and that means listening to each other. So there are a lot of emotions that come up in the stories, and we try to be really respectful and mindful of that for the participants and try to do that in a safe place in the workshops and in the performance. But the performance is the stage is a safe and sacred place where it's okay to say and do anything, because that's what a stage is for. You can do things on a stage that you can't do in the grocery store or at your Thanksgiving dinner table.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think that this kind of program that you folks have put together and the response from the community and the participation level and the emotionality that accompanies that, because it is their story, do you think there's a wider platform for that kind of program elsewhere?
Yes, and in fact, there are a vast array of arts and medicine organizations around the country and around the world. The U.S. is actually a little behind. It's far more common in places like England and Australia and even Canada, and it's actually the West Coast is behind the East Coast. There are far more programs that are like ours on the East Coast than on the West Coast, which as a Midwesterner I find fascinating. So yes, there is a platform for this kind of story sharing, and in fact it does happen all over. However, I find that very few people are aware of it, and so I try to reach out to other organizations that are doing work like ours to try and educate our communities collectively about these kinds of opportunities. Because in other cultures, in other lands, this is just a part of daily life in the community. But not so much in ours, and I think we lose something when we don't have a platform, a stage for sharing our stories.
Yes. So we're hoping through connecting communities and producing some of your works here that it will be another level for your performers and for the Institute to be able to share these stories in a wider community and a wider audience.
Yeah, and we are really grateful for that. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
We're so happy to be here to help you do it. It's exciting because I know the value of writing and being able to look at that writing and to say, oh, and maybe get an aha moment and some insight and some realizations, and then
I'd love to put in a plug for the actors, because sometimes I'll get asked by people, well, why don't you have the participants tell their own stories?
Yeah.
Our participants, I couldn't get on stage with a cattle prod. And they're playwrights at heart. But when you see someone else who listens to you so deeply that they represent you on stage and you watch them experiencing the same emotions that you remember experiencing, it's a very powerful way of feeling heard. That at the end of the workshop, almost all of our participants say that working with our actors has been their favorite part of the experience.
Thank you, Katie. That's very helpful for our audience to really understand the depth of the kind of work that you folks are doing.
Thank you.
And so now I'd like to introduce to you Love, Theater, and Healing. Lauren Modica will perform Love, written by Michelle Torland.
I wanted a puppy. I was in the 7th grade, but wanted a puppy since I could talk, and the neighbor kids where we lived when I was younger owned this beautiful golden retriever named Taffy, and I remember peering through the holes in the 8x2 plywood fencing that separated our yards, watching the kids run and laugh and play with Taffy. And I remember one night looking out my upstairs bedroom window into Dennis's room. He was the youngest boy, just a little older than I was. And he was reading to Taffy, who sat idly by, wagging her tail at him. And after then, I remember peeking in on them often. One night, I even remember Dennis storming into the room, upset, landing his head in the pillow and crying. And then Taffy came in shortly after, nudging her nose under his arm, consoling him. Oh, I want that, I thought. I pleaded with my mom for my own dog, a best friend. "What do you want a dog for?" she would always say. And my reply was, "Well, what kid doesn't want a dog?" What I really wanted to say was, I wanted a dog to pay attention to me when I came home and be happy to see me, and I wanted it near when I fell asleep and who I'd know would be there when I woke, but mostly I knew that dogs didn't drink. No, they didn't get drunk like my mom did. Pouring down rain, I ran to find shelter under a tree while walking home from school. And in the distance, I saw what looked to be a stray dog rummaging through a home's garbage cans on the sidewalk. I watched, and then I called to the dog. And the dog ran to me as if it knew me, and then halted as our eyes locked. And I remembered that I had half a sandwich in my backpack from lunch and pulled it out, and the dog came closer and became more at ease, and I began to pet the dog's head, and it was as if I'd heard a sigh of relief come from this animal. Yes, he came home with me. I sneaked him in undetected and lasted about a week before my mother discovered him. And thank goodness for the new boyfriend my mom had at the time. "Let the kid keep the dog. He's kind of cute," I remember him saying. And if not for my mom wanting to impress her temporary love, would she ever have consented for my new friend Manilow to stay? I always fantasized about how my father might look, what he was like. I envisioned him handsome and well-dressed and a great singer, of course, a world traveler, no doubt. And this explained why I didn't see him. I never knew who my father was, and my mother never gave mention of his name. So I convinced myself that my dad was Barry Manilow. Only the best singer of all time, hence the name Manilow. And for nearly 2 years, the bond between Manilow and I continually grew. I told Manilow everything. I laughed with him, and I cried with him, and I even began to heal the wounds from my mother's excessive drinking. I found refuge with Manilow from With his unthreatening way, he made his presence be known to my mother when she went to strike me. Her random beating ceased, and Manilow bared witness to the good and bad in my life and completely understood me. My mother even recognized the love we had for each other, and at times I would catch glimpses of her smiling as she watched Manilow and me. It was one of the few times that I remember my mom smiling back then. After every school day, Manilow would be waiting to greet me, tail wagging at the tree where we first met. And oddly, this day, Manilow wasn't there. So I returned home to find my mother sitting in the back seat of her four-door Rambler with the door open and her head in her hands, and Mom, she looked at me with her eyes bloodshot and swollen, and then she gazed slowly to the right of her, where a white towel laid out on the back seat. Manilow's lifeless body lay under it because Manilow had been hit by a drunk driver who'd swerved into the lawn in front of our house, hitting Manilow and then driving off. And the driver found himself arrested for drunk driving within 2 miles away, but Manilow died instantly. And I was told that my mother lay cradling him for hours, sobbing and praying for God to just bring him back. And that day marked the last day that my mother ever drank again. God's name spelled backwards reads dog.
Wow. I don't know what to say.
Neither do I. It's been a while since I've heard that, but thank you.
Did you think about writing that story before you went to the writer's workshop?
No.
No.
No. This is actually the third workshop that I'd participated with WellArts. And honestly, with this piece, I came to the conclusion that I actually can write. And with this piece is the only one that I just wrote. I didn't think about it like I had the other pieces. It's definitely a personal story, but not as personal as the other ones had been previously. And I just sat down and wrote. And it just seemed to inclusively and spiritually fit so many different genres and so many different interests that it just kind of blew my mind that it just came from the heart. So,
Was there something about that workshop that inspired you to do that writing at that time?
I believe so. I am a single mother and I returned to college in addition to working full time. And I believe it was a transition. It transcended things that had happened in my past life, my upbringing, and just has brought me to different levels. And that's also what WellArts has done as well, is help me grow and evolve. So, yeah, definitely.
Do you still talk to Manilow?
Funny thing, when I was a little girl, I can't believe that I'm admitting this, I would run in front of the TV when he would be on the Johnny Carson show and just be in awe. And it was Barry Manilow is the only thing that could calm me down as a little girl. And I can't say that I listened to him as an adult, but yeah, that's hence the name Manilow.
What would you like our viewers to take away from this story tonight?
I think this story is just the gift that keeps on giving for me. Every time that it's heard, I get a different response from people that hear it that say, oh, I had a dog. It reminds me of my first dog. My mother drank. I lived in an abusive home. There's just so many ways that it has resonated in people's hearts that I could have never imagined. So I think that each time it's heard, it's a different experience for not only me, but the people that get to listen to it. So serving its purpose.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For sharing. That's a very poignant and personal and very intimate story.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I hope to hear more stories from you in the
Thanks.
future. And now Mickey Lipsey will perform Suspended Animation, written by Martha Simpson.
My grandmother is a story we will have to talk about because she was my mentor. She graduated from college at 16. Brilliant, brilliant woman. And I literally sat at her feet on hot summer days and listened to her stories of Charleston, of race riots, of the boy who pulled the earring out of her lobe, of the people of Charleston, the house they lived in. All of these things she brought to my heart. She was a marvelous woman who married a man who was going to bring her to a plantation in Louisiana. Turned out to be red clay. I mean, they had enough, but she could have been very wealthy. And she found herself in red clay and working in her home in a way that she never had before. She said, I remember not having money in my hand because she had a mother-in-law from hell who managed everything. But here was this brilliant woman, and people seemed to love her. They called her Maggie. Her name was Margaret. I cannot imagine anyone calling Margaret Maggie. Oh, the blacks loved her. And she didn't say it in these terms, but that was the population that worked on the farms, and how one could cook a possum, and they would kill a possum and bring it to her because Miss Maggie could do anything. And she would cook the possum for them. And all the time, we're talking once a year or something, but it was something that made them love her because she would do these things. Because she was brought up with a nanny who was black that she loved. And she had no feeling that there was anything but love there. She remembers them putting broken glass above the wall and back of their home so when they had the race riots, they couldn't crawl over and hurt Miss Maggie. No, her nanny held her and loved her when nobody else did. Her mother, her nanny held her when no one else did. Her mother was a very proper lady. So that was the woman who gave her love. And someone asked me why I did not have the conflicts that we had back in the racial times. And I said the first woman that I ever knew, the first person I ever loved was black because my mother was sick and my two older sisters weren't old enough to take care of us. Aunt Rena was my nanny, and she held me in her arm, and I sat on her lap, and well, it was sort of like my grandmother all over again, having her nanny, and I had mine for a short period of time. So the people you love are the people you reach out to. Oh, she helped the blacks in many ways. And once, do you know what the word suspended animation means? My grandmother had a child who died and buried her, and my grandmother thought that child was not really dead, and they thought she was just hysterical. So going forward a few years, her baby, my aunt, died. But hot summer day, And she said, this baby is not dead. And she would not let the people come and bury her. And the community came out literally to take that baby because they said she'd gone crazy with hysterics. And black people came to my grandmother's house with guns and kept the townspeople away. And my grandfather was out working somewhere. Oh, he was a cabinet maker. And then mother-in-law from hell came to take that dead baby to bury it. And while she was there, she saw, I think, an eyelid quivered. And within hours, that baby began breathing and so on. And they called it suspended animation. But that was the kind of woman my grandmother was. She believed, and she had the rifle, and these blacks had rifles, and they kept the townspeople from taking that dead baby because they knew it was not dead. That's a story. It sounds like I made it up. But she said, I buried one, I won't bury another one. Aunt Mill lived 85, maybe 89 years. No brain damage, nothing wrong. She just came back a little baby and lived a little.
Martha, welcome. What was it like for you to write this story in the workshop?
I didn't know I was going to write it. We were told that this program was going to be happening, and I volunteered with the rest. And I walked in the room, and there were all of us older people, and there were all of these older people who were going to write about us older people. And there was a young man there, and we looked at each other, and we were the two. And we began writing, and suddenly we found another room. And we went in that room, and he opened up his computer, and whatever happened had.
Wow. Sounds like quite a memorable experience for you.
Well, I learned about him as much as he learned about me because we'd shut off the computer and then he would talk. And so we had a lot of similar experiences, but I taught that age group, and we understood each other. And it was a beautiful experience.
Is there anything more you want to add about this story?
I was talking with someone before I came in here about something I had written a short while ago. And in the last paragraph of it, I had a brother who died last year.
Sorry for your loss.
In writing it, I said, you know, I've been told that as long as you can speak a person's name, that person never dies. And I'd like to think that my grandmother never died.
Yes.
She was a remarkable woman.
It seems like she does live in your heart.
I think in the heart of everyone who knew Miss Maggie. I hated the name Miss Maggie. You know, Margaret is so much more. But she talked to people, and she understood people. And that was her gift. And how she came from that illustrious background, as it were, to where she ended up. I wonder how she brought all of that with her, all of that love and all of that understanding. And I like to think it sort of began with her nanny.
With her nanny.
Because her mother was a rather cold woman. I do a lot of genealogy, and when I read the things that happened, I realize who gave her that love and that understanding.
Okay.
And maybe Aunt Rena did that for me.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be the mom or the dad or...
It's who gives you that what you need at that time in your life that you needed. And hers was a dog.
Yes.
Mine was my grandmother.
Yes. What would you like the viewers, the audience, to take away from your story tonight?
I think we all have a Miss Maggie in our lives somewhere. And I think that the greatest disservice we can give to people is not to acknowledge that. and give them grace when you speak about them.
Do you think it takes any amount of courage or determination to get into a workshop and have that kind of an experience, or is that?
Oh, I didn't plan that experience. No, didn't take courage. We just, a young man and an older woman, hit it off, and we spoke to each other. And he spoke to me as much as I spoke to him. He just didn't write his down.
So there was just this instant human connection that you're
was.
describing.
It was.
Okay.
It was not an older woman and a younger man. It were two people talking,
Okay.
and it was wonderful.
Thank you so much for sharing tonight. We really appreciate it. And we hope to read more of your stories. And now, Jenny Newbury Waters will perform Lost and Found, written by Robin Lane.
Did I seek you? Did you seek me? I know you did, but it seems strange thinking of you as a seeker. Couldn't you snap your fingers and get anything you wanted? No. Not love. Love comes with very hard work. Love comes in waiting, and sometimes never comes, no matter what you do. Did I find you in a book? I always loved books. This book, you bled all over the pages. You are love, my love. The lover who pays the highest price. Me. I was a lonely, much-hated child. Unimportant, often ridiculed. It seemed so easy finding you, but pursuing you as you called me deeper into your love was harder. When I was 24, you wooed me. I got into a car crash, but you'd already given me the choice whether to stay on Earth or go home to you. I'd chosen to stay, not because I thought Earth is better, but because I wanted to help others come to share this kind of love with you. So I couldn't die. You wouldn't let it happen. The broken seat on the car, which had made me so uncomfortable whenever I drove it, saved my life. In the hospital, where they put my leg in traction and later put a metal plate in my broken hip, my visitors came frequently at first and then dwindled as the month wore on. I needed grounding. A human face was best, but they were increasingly fewer. My mind was drifting away with the help of many drugs. But you stayed. Together we played. You taught me the need for physical grounding and about the parts we all play of child, parent, and adult, ideas I'd recognize later when people spoke of them. You took me back to painful moments, let me feel them for the first time, began to heal me. You became a part of me. Let me feel what you feel. We became one. My life and yours intermingled, and both were transformed minute by minute. The craziness got worse. Out of the hospital, without the drugs, you and I had become monsters no one understood. You didn't match the book anymore. I was so wrong, the floor dropped out from under me. The gift that saved me from my insanity was harsh. Injections that made me able to think straight rendered me bowed and shaking like an old woman, kept me up at night with convulsions, took away my imagination, and made me so docile I was easily talked out of the closeness you had given me. It was, they said, a delusion. The gift was an obstacle. Into the depths of pain I tripped. I struggled with monster depression, but when I most needed a friend, I was turned away, told to spend my time with you. But I could only vaguely imagine you in the rocking chair, silent and still. The closeness between us didn't return in earnest until mania hit me again. Could we ever be one again when I was sane? When my logic crawled back, I couldn't believe that you would be so close to the likes of me. So, I pushed you back up into the sky and let other entities take your place. Until after my daughter was born. You asked me if you could be her father. I said yes. I let you back when I was sane. Since then, we've been together, one through all my states of being, forever.
Well, Robin, thanks for joining us on the set tonight and sharing that really intense story. What was your experience like at the workshop in writing this?
Well, previously I had been writing, I think, mostly fiction pieces, and I wanted to start writing something, personal from nonfiction. And Katie had this theme that week of hero seeking treasure. And she was saying, you have a hero, the hero seeks a treasure, and there is some kind of obstacle that gets in the way, and some kind of gift that is given that is supposed to help overcome the obstacle. And I thought about what was most important to me as far as this kind of a theme. And the first question that, I knew right away who it would be about, but the two people that it would be about, the treasure would be a person, but which one was the hero, which one was the seeker? And that's not so easy to determine, but I felt like I was sought whether I sought him or not. And the rest kind of came from there, and the gift being an obstacle, of course, was the medication that was so strong and had such terrible side effects, and the counseling that was given to me that ended up hurting me so much. It was hard to determine. It's like the illness got in the way but I had to get over that being delusional too. It was a hard thing, but I survived it.
We're very glad you did.
Took years to get really stable and get over the distance and the depression and the confusion going back and forth there.
Have you written any more about your experience when you were in that state?
Do you mean in WellArts or altogether?
Altogether.
I've written, sure, I've written other things, mostly just for my own self and not knowing how to share it, or sometimes some things in some poems. I'm writing Katie Scott is writing a poem a day right now, and I've got at least one poem that deals with that also, and
Okay.
yeah.
That's great.
The time that I got my the metal plate in my hip and what that represented to me.
Okay. Well, we'd love to hear more from you sometime. What would you like our viewers or audience to take away from this story tonight? Is there some sort of message you'd like to tell them?
Yes, I would like them to have a message of hope and to know that God God created us to have a relationship with Him, and we're so unique, each one of us, that every relationship that we could have with God is different than anybody else's. That we're facets of Him, of His nature, and each of us is a unique, different facet, no matter how many of us could ever be born. You know, it's infinite. And there's so much love, and He is a lover that seeks us out.
Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate it. And now, Sue Ellen Christensen will perform The Weed Eater.
It's hot. I've been putting off cutting the tall, dry grass behind my house all day. I can't put it off any longer, or my neighbor is going to report me to the department again. They'll send someone over from the county who will cut down all the grass in probably less than an hour, and then they'll send me a bill. I can't afford another bill. I have to get out there and get it done. I purchased a new weed eater tool today. I have about 2 hours left till dusk. I go out and start up the weed eater according to the instructions and attack the grass, cutting down huge swaths of the stuff. Wow, what an amazing feeling! The grass falls swiftly at my feet, giving me such a wonderful sensation of power. I cut a huge pathway from my door to the fence in a matter of minutes. I am Wonder Woman, Helen of Troy, and Joan of Arc all wrapped up into one. Nothing can stop me now. I've got my machine. Look out, I'm coming through. God, this is great. I should have gotten one of these a long time ago. It's so easy and so fast. Why did I ever try to mow back there? This is much easier. I look at my watch. It's been 45 minutes and I haven't even worked up a sweat. I am thirsty, though. I could use some iced tea. I go into the kitchen, get some tea, and sit in a kitchen chair. I feel a slight nausea, probably from all the dust and pollen I've inhaled. I think to myself, I should have worn a dust mask. As I lift my glass to my lips, I notice that both of my arms feel strange, as if they were vibrating. I pick up the directions from the weed eater. They state, after you have finished using the machine, you may notice a vibrating feeling in your hands and arms. This is normal. The machine vibrates intensely, leaving this after effect. I think to myself, I should get back out there and finish the job. The other side of my brain answers, you could go out and finish early in the morning tomorrow. You don't need to do it all today. Then I notice a heavy sensation in my chest, making it hard to breathe. I wonder to myself, could this be? I decide to call Kaiser Hospital. I ask to speak to an advice nurse and am put on hold and made to listen to some god-awful music. After several minutes of this abuse, I hang up and call 911. Best move ever. Paramedics from the fire department arrive within minutes. I'm fading, sitting in a chaise lounge on my front deck and looking up into the branches of my 100-year-old oak tree and thinking of how beautiful she is. 5 handsome young men surround me, one asking me meaningless questions like, where do you live? The others busy with various tasks. Somehow, I end up on a stretcher and feel myself being lifted up in the air where I have a better view of the oak tree's beautiful branches. I'm glad I never let them cut you down, I tell her. Now there are more handsome young men. Some are coming, some are going. There's an ambulance. I'm in it, going down my country road to I know not where. I have to go to the Kaiser, I say to the paramedic next to me. No, you don't, he responds. We're taking you to the nearest hospital. I feel myself being carried on a stretcher. Then everything goes black. I wake up, I don't know where I am. A kind young anesthesiologist is sitting next to me, and suddenly we are practically nose to nose. I cannot speak, something's in my throat, my hands and feet are tied down. I have 5 IVs in me. My chest is a deep purple color. The anesthesiologist tells me I have just survived a major heart attack. I'm in a hospital, in ICU, and I have a breathing tube in my throat which must stay there until the doctor arrives to remove it tomorrow at 8 a.m. He says it is now 11 p.m. He calms me down, partly by breathing with me until I can relax and let the machine do the breathing, and partly by giving me a shot of a wonder drug called morphine. I drift off to sleep, like my favorite old oak tree. I am still alive.
Hi, artist.
Hi,
How you doing?
good.
Good. I noticed some of your responses, quiet responses to what our reader was reading about those 5 good-looking young men coming to your rescue.
You make me blush.
You have been.
Yes. Yeah, she did a good job. I feel like she really expressed what I was writing well.
And the oak tree image
Yes.
from the beginning to the time in the hospital, it's sort of, I get the impression that was really a good thing, having that oak tree impression being with you, so you kind of coping with it,
Oh, yeah.
the situation.
Yeah. In fact, the feeling of fading away so slowly and then being lifted up like that and seeing that tree, and it was, I thought, man, if this is how I'm going to go, this is really great. This is, I was ready. I was like, man, this is the way to go, you know? I should be so lucky.
Should we all be so lucky?
Yeah.
So, what was it like for you in the workshop to talk about this, to see someone write it or to write with them?
I've always been pretty open about my writing and about my life in general. I've experienced a lot of therapy to recover from a lot of the trauma of my life, and so I think that's really part of what has made it easy for me to write in company. I remember when it was first suggested to me to write in a writing group. Actually, it was by my daughter who first brought up the idea, and I thought, why would anyone want to write in a group? That was something I had always done alone.
Yeah.
But it's a totally different experience.
What would you like our viewers, our audience, to take away from your story tonight?
I think just the feeling that none of us has an idea of how long we have on this earth, no matter what our age, no matter what our state of health. That from one moment to the next, you could step off a curb and a bus could flatten you and that could be it. Your life is done and over. And so whatever you're going to do with your life, you better do it now. If there's anybody you haven't told that you love, if there's anything that you haven't expressed, this might be your last chance right now, this moment. Not just this day, but this actual moment.
That's really good advice.
This is Miles, and I say that he's my service animal, but he says that I'm his.
Oh,
And it's kind of hard to tell where the line is drawn sometimes. You know, like who's the service animal here? But he accompanies me everywhere, and I just feel a whole lot more relaxed and supported, you know, with Miles along. He goes to the doctor and the dentist and everywhere.
And now he's on television.
And now he's on
He's
television.
making his debut tonight.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for introducing your dog, your blessed
Sure.
dog, to us, because he's just a part of your life, and this is great
Very
stuff.
much. Yeah. It's me and Miles.
All right.
All the way.
Thank you. Thank you, Miles. Hi, and we're back. That was interesting with Miles. I'm glad we
Yes.
included him.
Yeah, he is a gorgeous dog, and he's very welcome at all the shows. The audience loves him.
He's welcome here anytime.
Awesome.
Anytime.
Well, I think he liked it, so he might come back.
Yes, I think he might be knocking on the door sometime too. The performance tonight was incredible. I mean, I just really got a better sense of how the workshops are set up and how you provide like a framework in which so folks can think about how to think about the writing.
Yeah.
So I really like that. That's just real rich to me.
Thank you very much. When I first started working for WellArts, coming from a straight theater background, at first I thought, you know, I've got no psych background, no social work background. I don't know what I have to offer these people, and all I could rely on is my training as an artist. And so all I can do really is to help people tell their stories in a way that an audience can access them, and really think about them and also feel them in their hearts. And theater is a wonderful way to do that, that you've got this whole audience and they're all experiencing this one person's story, and it's a really magic thing. It's something that I find very addicting and that I love. And I always have to tell people too, because I at first we had audience members coming up and saying, wow, that's great that you wrote those stories based on those people's lives. And oh my God, no, that's not what we do. That's not what it's about. Everybody writes their own story or dictates it to a trained scribe because, and I think people think that we aren't that good as artists, that we're not all artists, you know, that it takes a special person to be able to write that way. And art is a human inherent right. You know, that there are paintings in the Chauvet caves that are 30,000 years old that look like they could have been painted today, that it's part of who we are as people, and we should all give that expression in a place that sets us up for success and nurtures that. And that's a wonderful thing that for me to get to do. I'm really grateful to get to do what I do.
And we are so grateful that you're here and you've brought your folks with you, and it's just been a great experience. I just love it, and we want you to come back. Will you come back?
Yes, we would be happy to. Thank you.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are connecting communities. So appreciate the professional actor performances tonight from the WellArts Institute. It has been our distinct honor and privilege to produce this show for all of you. We have learned from our writers how they began to find their voices, sharing their very intimate and personal experiences in stories in a safe place during a writing workshop sponsored by WellArts Institute. Our writers have generously allowed their stories to be heard by all of you, all of us, and the larger community. We look forward to WellArts' continued success. Good night, everyone, and see you next month for another episode of Connecting Communities.